Good afternoon.
Hello there, Lord. How are you?
Good.
Great. Great.
Who is
Jerome?
that? Jerome. Thanks for joining us, Jerome.
Oh, cool.
Jonathan.
Hey, Lloyd.
Hey, Jonathan. Jonathan, do you want to, when we get ready to get started, do you want to say any words of introduction to this? Or you want me to?
You know what? I think your words will be just fine.
All right.
But I thank you for offering.
All right. All right. Well, we'll see if anybody else joins us. We will get started shortly. We'll give people another couple of minutes and then we'll get started. Melissa, are you on the call? Supposed to be here as well, our trustee coordinator, because she's handling the smart sheet. There she is. Melissa, did you just join? Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started. My name is Lloyd Schmeidler. I'm a senior community development analyst in the City of Durham's Community Development Department, where we serve as the Durham Continuum of Care lead agency. We have offered this session as an opportunity for projects in the Durham Continuum of Care in the homeless housing and services system in Durham to become familiar with the relatively new performance measures and benchmarks that the Continuum of Care Board, the Homeless Services Advisory Committee, adopted in March of this year. The Performance Management Committee, as part of its responsibilities, is to be monitoring project performance of all projects operating within the homeless housing system of Durham. And so as part of their efforts to fulfill that responsibility, they will be reviewing project performance semi-annually in the 6 project types for which we have adopted performance measures and particular benchmarks that we are hoping that our projects will be able to meet. And those projects are listed in this introductory session. Would someone confirm that you can see my screen that I'm sharing?
I can see it.
Very good. So the 6, thank you, Jonathan. So the 6 project types are street outreach, emergency shelters for families, emergency shelters serving single adults or adults unaccompanied by children, transitional housing projects, rapid rehousing projects, and then permanent supportive housing projects. All projects in these project types, including those using an HMIS comparable database, are expected to report project performance on these performance measures twice annually for the 6-month period ending March 31st and the 12-month period ending September 30th. In the future, we anticipate that the deadline for the submission is going to be probably 6 weeks or so after these performance periods. But we've just gotten the process approved for this year. And so for this first iteration, we will be setting a submission deadline of December 31st, 2022 for the 12-month period of project performance that ended September 30th, 2022. And this document that I'm reviewing now is basically intended to be a tool that helps project administrators and managers understand what the particular measures are, as well as understand the benchmarks. And my colleague, Melissa Hernandez, after we review this document, is going to be demonstrating a smart sheet online website that will allow projects to enter the particular numerator or denominator or the result that might be needed in a particular to compute the performance on a particular measure and report it in that smart sheet, so that while this document shows how to make the calculations, ordinarily project administrators will not need to actually make the calculations themselves, because it's already calculated, going to be calculated in the smart sheet. But we want people to understand what the calculations mean. Any questions so far? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question along the way if you need to. And I would ask Melissa, I'm not able to see the project participants, so feel free to interrupt me if somebody has raised their hand, and we can deal with questions as we go through. So for street outreach projects, there are several project benchmarks and measures. We are measuring the contacts who enroll or engage with the street outreach project. And the benchmark is sets kind of the expectation of the CoC, that as a CoC, we expect that 60% of the contacts will engage with the street outreach project. People may notice that throughout the presentation and the source that we are using, or the sources we're using, are tables within the continuum of care annual performance report, or the what we call the APR. That has it provides kind of a good summary of the overall performance of a particular project for the specified length of time. So again, for this first report, projects will be submitting performance from the APR for the period October 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2022. And this first measure, one of street outreach, looks at tables 9B and 9A, and it takes the total number of people enrolled in the project from table 9B as the numerator, and takes the total number of people contacted by the project that's reported in table 9A as the denominator. So that creates a fraction. And for example, we might anticipate that maybe there were 65 people enrolled in a project during the reporting period, and that was out of, for ease of calculation, 100 people that would be contacted, right? So that would create a performance result of 65%, 65 over 100, 65% of the people. So the project would have exceeded the standard or the benchmark. In column B of this table, simply reporting the measures, you can see that the The definition of the measure is given in column A. The particular benchmark is in bold in column B, and that kind of gives projects the particular standard that we are expecting the projects to achieve. And at this point, there are no particular consequences as such for projects not meeting the standard or consequences for exceeding the standard. We hope that all of our projects in Durham are kind of in Lake Wobegon, where they are above average. And a lot of these benchmarks actually were suggested based on average performance across the CoC or close to the average. So that's where the particular benchmarks, particularly when we have new performance measures like we do for street outreach, that's how we arrived at the particular benchmark, was where we looked at the average that we have and came up with a benchmark that is reasonably close to that average. Measure 3 looks at total income. And we quite honestly were surprised that there are significant numbers of people in street outreach projects who do have some income, whether it's employment income or disability income of one kind or another. And certainly we expect that projects, street outreach managers will help people maintain or even increase their total income as they go through the street outreach project and experience additional support for their efforts to regain housing. Similarly, health insurance coverage, significant numbers already do, and we want case managers to increase that. I'm not going to spend necessarily a lot of time, but if people are reviewing the particular measures or the benchmarks, I think they're somewhat self-explanatory, but if people do have questions as we read through them, certainly again, feel free to raise your hand and we can deal with questions. There are a few measures that the APR actually provides the percentage that we will be looking at. Measure 1 for emergency shelter for families. It's also the same for singles, although the benchmark is different. But table 23C on the APR provides a percentage at the towards the very end of the table that does a calculation as to what percentage of people who exited the project have exited to a positive housing destination. And I see I've got a minor grammatical correction I want to make here by adding close quotes at the end of that. Positive housing destination is a particular definition. It's the definition of a positive housing destination is slightly different for street outreach projects compared to other projects that we're considering today. So we use that definition as HUD uses it in the annual performance report. So measure 1, that percentage is already provided in the APR. Similarly, the average length of stay is computed for measure 2, so that computation is not needed there. Computation is needed for measure 3 on total income, and this I would say project managers who are on the call, computing total income, it's important to look at the right rows and the right columns of table 19A2. It is can be a difficult table to interpret or to find the right rows and columns to calculate. And we've tried to be as precise as we can be. We're looking at the 5th row of data or the 5th row of numbers, looking at columns 4, 5, and 6. And you can pay attention to the column headings which help you understand what data is being looked at. So we're looking at, I think the column headings are things like the client maintained total income during the project, they increased their income, or they did not have the income at start, but they had it at exit. So those are some of the variations, kind of the variations you're looking at in the column headings. And then column 8 simply looks at the reports the total number of participants, which is used as the denominator. But for the numerator, you add up the numbers in the 3 columns, 4, 5, and 6. And then column 8 is the total number of people. And that gives you a fraction as well. So for single adults, the reason we have separate reporting information for single adults, we're reporting on the same measures, but the benchmarks or the standards that we expect projects to achieve are somewhat different for single adult projects compared to emergency shelters serving families. But again, no computation is needed for measures 1 and 2. The percentage of people exiting to positive housing destinations and the average length of stay is reported in the APR itself. Measure 3, the total income, you do need to make a similar calculation as to the one we described. For transitional housing projects, as you know, allow people to participate in the project for up to 2 years. And because projects have more time to help people achieve, hopefully, more positive outcomes, certainly in housing as well as in other benchmarks or other measures that help them maintain housing after they get back into permanent housing. We also have more measures that we're asking transitional housing projects to strive to achieve. And you'll see that the percentage measure 1, again, exits to positive housing destinations, which is the key measure for helping people end their homelessness, is to help them get back to a positive housing destination. The benchmark, the standard is somewhat higher for transitional housing projects. Similarly, again, we're looking at total income. We are looking at employment income, and HUD typically requires or expects CoC funded projects to have at least 20% of adult participants maintain or increase their employment or earned income at project exit. And that's kind of a standard that we've adopted from HUD. We realize that some projects, people may have some significant disabilities, but there are significant percentages of people with disabilities that also are gainfully employed, even if only part-time. We're looking at non-cash benefit sources. Then the sources are the ones listed in the APR. We realize these are not the only non-cash mainstream benefit programs. I believe there is a row in the table that says other, but we're simply looking at the number of leavers. We're not necessarily looking at the sources themselves, but we're looking at the number of leavers with one or more than one source of non-cash benefits that exit for the leavers. And again, the denominator is the total number of leavers from the project. Similarly, looking at health insurance coverage, how many left with one or more than one source of health insurance, and what was the total number of leavers. Continuing on, rapid rehousing projects have similar measures, again with benchmarks perhaps somewhat different. exits again to positive housing destinations is being considered. Again, total income is being considered. The length of project participation before housing move-in is specifically measured for rapid rehousing projects, again, because HUD does have an expectation that projects rapidly rehouse people, and rapid is part of the name of this project type. So in HUD's estimation, that means that projects should be able to help people move into housing within 30 days of their project start date. So when a client starts in rapid rehousing, kind of the clock begins ticking as to how quickly the project can help the client move into a permanent housing situation from either the emergency shelter or perhaps even from an unsheltered situation. Again, we're looking at health insurance coverage, measure 4, and those are the 4 measures for rapid rehousing. Excuse me. Permanent supportive housing projects, again, have several more measures because they work with people for longer periods of time. Excuse me for that. I muted myself because I had to cough, and hopefully you didn't hear that, but hopefully you can make it through. So permanent housing stability, the measure here again is looking, people are already in a permanent housing destination or positive housing destination by virtue of being in permanent supportive housing. So we're looking at the percentage that maintain permanent housing, or if they do exit, the percentage who exit to another positive or permanent housing destination. And again, this computation is a little different because we're looking at not only the total number of persons exiting to a positive housing destination reported in table 23C, but also adding to it the people who continue to remain in the permanent supportive housing project, and that gives you the percentage. And that percentage is we've had good success in the Durham CoC with 95% or more of the people either exiting to permanent housing destinations or continuing to reside in permanent housing. Total income is being considered, again, looking at tables 19A1 and 19A2 for the permanent supportive housing. We have 2 separate tables, 19A1 and 19A2. One of them looks at the performance of people who are stayers in the project, and the other table looks at the number of leavers or people who have exited the project. So those 2 numbers need to be added together to come up with the overall percentage for the project. Similarly, measure 3 looks at employment and earned income, uses the same tables 19A1 and 19A2, but it uses the first row of data, first row of numbers, rather than the 5th row as measure 2 does. Measure 4 looks at table 20B, again looking at whether people have one or more than one non-cash or mainstream benefit at exit, specifically for leavers. And health insurance coverage also looks at the percentage of project participants who add health insurance coverage at exit. So that is hopefully a relatively brief overview of all of the measures, and the particular benchmarks again have been highlighted in bold. We will be sending this reporting tool out to project administrators and managers, perhaps tomorrow or probably tomorrow. I think we can get this out at least to some project managers, and we'll be getting making sure we have coverage of all of our HMIS reporting projects in these 6 project types in early December. With that, I am going to stop sharing my screen unless there are particular questions about any particular measure or project type that anybody wants to raise at this time. And I'll be turning it over, the rest of the presentation over to our coordinator, Melissa Hernandez, who will share her screen and share the smart sheet that will be used for projects to actually submit their performance and a copy of their annual performance report for the period. Feel free to unmute yourself. I believe you can do that if you do have a question. Otherwise, I'm going to mute myself, and Melissa, you can take it on from here.
Hey, Lloyd, this is Malcolm.
Hey, Malcolm.
Sorry, it's apparently dark in my office right now.
You're good.
I have a brief question as it just came to me. So what does the submission of this report for the Performance Management Committee, how does that align with the former semi-annual evaluations of PSH projects? Will there be those 2 evaluations in addition to this, or will this take the place of one of those?
That's a great question. At this point, this reporting is in addition to those 2 performance evaluations. You will note that the semi-annual evaluations of CoC funded projects looks at quite a few more areas of performance than this minimal reporting does. I think we thought of, I mean, we did take that question kind of into consideration and thought at least as we begin this process, we would continue to ask all of our projects to provide this reporting, realizing that generally the reporting periods are not going to overlap, but essentially our CoC funded projects would be reported, or would be at least looking at their performance, and we would be looking at the performance kind of on a quarterly basis, because the 2 semi-annual evaluations look at different reporting periods than this process is going to.
Okay. Thank you for answering that.
Okay. Melissa, any other questions before I mute myself?
I don't see any other hands unless someone wants to unmute for a question. Okay, well, Lloyd, if that's okay, I can go ahead and start sharing my screen for the smart sheet process.
Yes, by all means.
All right. So I know that we had quite a few people who were asking during initial presentations of this, whether they would have to use the actual Word document that Lloyd shared to submit their data, and they will not. Instead, we'll be using the smart sheet process. So there is a dashboard that I've created that houses all of the forms for all of the different projects. It does include some of the introductory information on Lloyd's tool, and the Word document is also on this dashboard as well, just as a reference. So you won't need to actually fill out the Word document and submit that, but it is available here so that you can have the full reference material. Because the form that you'll complete won't have all of the information that's on the reference document. So I do want you guys to have access to that. So the dashboard will have that document linked in there. And then each individual project will submit their data through a smart sheet form. So I've listed the 6 different project types that we're asking for performance data on. And you'll just select your given project. So I'm Durham CoC, and I'm going to pretend I'm submitting a form for a rapid rehousing project. And I would just click on that form. You're going to need to put in the date that you're completing the form, because we want to make sure that we know when your data was input. So I'm choosing today's date. We also want you to put the date that you exported your data from HMIS, just so that we have an accurate date for that as well. So if you pulled your report today, you would select that date. Your organization name would go here. And then the project name. So if this is going to be like a rapid rehousing project, then you would just put rapid rehousing here, or whatever. If you have a specific name for your project, it would go there. And then we also have the different measures that Lloyd referenced in the document earlier. So it
Melissa?
actually provides, yes.
Sorry, I wanted to make sure I was catching up to one thing. This is Malcolm from Alliance. Could you scroll back up for 1 minute, please? So I apologize if I wasn't paying attention clearly enough to understand this, but the form submission date and the data export date. So you want the date that we're submitting the spreadsheet or the smart sheet form, and then which might be the same as the date that we're inputting this, but it's not the APR date. Is that what I got?
So this is going to be like the date that you're submitting the data for.
Yeah.
So for example, if we're evaluating the period ending September 30th of 2021, for example, I'd want you to put that date here.
So it's the end date of the reporting period.
Right. I should
Okay.
probably clarify that, right?
Yeah,
Sorry, that makes more sense.
I can clarify
Definitely,
that
if you
here.
could, yeah, update that description.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's an easy thing for me to change.
let me jump in and see if I'm understanding things correctly. So I think the first form submission date is clear enough. It's the date you're submitting this form. The data export date, as I understand it, Melissa, correct me if I'm misunderstanding, is the date you pulled the APR from the HMIS. That's the date and it could be the date you submit the information here, but it might be, a week too earlier, life gets busy, but you pull the APR, and that's how I see it. Does that make sense?
Well, I was thinking it was the date that the reporting period date, just because if we're doing this on a biannual basis, we'll need to separate out which reporting period we're evaluating.
Well, then maybe we need 3 dates.
We can do that too. I can do that.
I mean that the reporting period. Maybe we should have another question that clarifies which reporting period.
Yep, I can do that.
Because obviously it often takes projects a few weeks to finalize their data for the reporting, right? I mean, even now we're making some corrections to HMIS data. So
Lloyd, just for I'm following your thought process, and I mean this just from curiosity, but what's the value of knowing the date that we pulled our APR if you have set the APR review period? Like, so if I pull the APR next Monday on the 28th, and I submit this on December 13th, like you would get December 13th at the top. Then you want to see that I pulled it on 11/28, and then another date that says that it was for the data that ends on September 30th.
Yeah,
I'm not quite sure what the value.
yeah,
of the
I mean, I
pull
think
date
it's
really is.
I think probably it is. I think it is already reported on the APR, is it not? When you pulled it, so we
I
probably
think the runtime shows, yeah.
Yeah, so we probably can omit that and just do what the reporting period is.
Yeah, I'll
So-
update this to show reporting period.
Yeah,
ending date, and then I will update this description as well to reflect that information.
good.
Is that helpful for everyone?
Yep, that's precisely why we are having this session, right?
Right,
Yes, thank you.
exactly.
Make
This is
sure
very
that's helpful to
helpful.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. That's very helpful.
Right, and Sally, I think raised a question about the project name. Yeah, ideally, it's the same name that you have in the HMIS or in your comparable database.
Perfect. And I can clarify that as well, that it should match the project name in HMIS. I'll update that so that it reflects it there as well. And then,
Yeah, like the level 4. So you want our level 4 project number, like everybody gets a 4-digit number. You want you want that whole description. So I think like it's Alliance Health HUD dash Permanent Supportive Housing 4685 or something. That's the full name that you want.
right, exactly. So I'll update this so that it's a little bit more descriptive, so that it's saying it should match the project name as it shows in HMIS. That way we can decipher, because I know there was mention that some providers have multiple projects. So I'll update that so that it's a little clearer. And then for the measures are pretty straightforward. It's going to match exactly what was shown on the reference document. So it'll tell you exactly what line of the APR to go to find the data. Some of it, there's just a percentage already in there in the APR. So you don't have to do any additional, or so the form does not have to do additional calculations. You'll just input the percentage. And then there are other areas where it requires a numerator and a denominator. You will not be asked to calculate that though. The form will automatically calculate as long as you put the numbers in. So like here, it's asking for the sum of columns 4, 5, and 6 of the APR. You'll just put that there. And then for the denominator, same thing. It's asking you for the number in column 8. So let's pretend that number is 20. Measure 3 is asking for length in days, I believe, right? Yep. So then let's pretend this is, I don't know, 50 days. And then this one is asking for another numerator denominator. Let's pretend 10, 20. And now the last line is very important. We're asking all projects to submit a PDF link to the APR that they use to submit their data. This is going to be for us on our end to do any data cleanups, just in case there are any mistakes or anything like that. We'll be able to go back in and use the link that you've provided to the APR that you used for your data, so that we can verify that everything is as it should be. And once you've filled all of this out, you'll just submit. I do recommend that you all submit a copy of your responses to yourselves, just so you can have it for your records. And then you'll just press submit, and you'll get that email showing all of the responses that you submitted on the form. I see a hand, Malcolm.
Okay, I'm a dinosaur, but when you say a PDF link file, you just mean like attaching the PDF the way you would to an email, right? Like it's gonna be like you could browse it from your computer, attach that file, and it will drop into that spot.
I think it's actually asking for a link. So like if you save to a OneDrive or Google Drive, whatever you use for like your digital drive, you'll just copy that link to the PDF.
And if we don't
link
use
there.
that, then what? Because Alliance does not.
Let me see. I can see if Smartsheets will allow me to put a link in. It should. I just have to change the formatting to see if it'll just let me do a browse. But as far as I know, Smartsheets usually does it directly from a OneDrive, like the links. So I'll
Okay.
see if there's a workaround for that.
This is Tracy from Alliance. Malcolm, we have been able to open up the Smartsheet when I participated in the ESG process for grants. So we shouldn't have any complications in doing so.
Okay.
Now, once this data is all submitted, because you guys are all, whoever's going to be submitting the data, they are going to have access to the full dashboard. So we just submitted a form for rapid rehousing. So if you wanted to see what that data looks like once it's poured into the report, you'll just click on where it says rapid rehousing projects, and it'll show you what that data looks like here. So it'll show you like the percentages. If you wanted to see what it actually ends up coming out to once it's all calculated, it'll be here. Ooh, I'll have to fix that. And then the reference document would also show up here, so that I can just click on the link, or Lloyd or whoever is going to be evaluating the data. They'll be able to click on it from there. There is one more thing. Because it's a dashboard on Smartsheets, I will need to give access to certain people. There is a plan to make this data publicly available. Once we've done like the full data cleanup, we'll pull a report that'll be accessible on the CoC website, because we do have to be able to make this data publicly available. But the dashboard itself will only be accessible to the people who are inputting the data from the different organizations. So I've created a form for you all to share an email that needs to be given access to this Smartsheet. And I will also be emailing this to everyone as well. So if you don't get it right now, don't worry. I've put that form in the chat here, if you all can submit it when you have a moment, and that will allow me to give you access to the dashboard once we send the email out about this. My apologies. I think we have a question, Sally.
Oh, I was just wondering if you could add a comment box to each of the forms in case there's something that, is the agency wish to note about the project itself.
I'll defer to Lloyd, only because I know that we're pulling this into a report that we're publicly sharing with the data. So Lloyd.
Yeah, it's certainly fine to have a comment box if people want to make comments about their performance data. Not a problem.
Any other questions about anything?
So I'm just completing the request form. So for question, I don't know. I think I know the answer. Well, so did you say this already? So you have to complete a separate dashboard access request form for each project type you have.
Just whoever needs access to the dashboard will need to submit that. So it's not necessarily based on projects. It's based on if your organization has multiple people who are submitting this data or just one, that person needs to submit that form so that I can add them to the dashboard so that they have access. So it's not based on project, it's just based on the person, like how many people.
Okay, so should we,
are submitting
how should
data.
we, the number 4 question, what are we supposed to do there?
You're just selecting all of the project types that your organization has.
It only allows you to select one.
Let's see. Try now. You may have to refresh. I made that like maybe 30 minutes before our meeting, so not surprising that there was a mistake. Any other questions about the dashboard, the report, or the request form to get access to the smart sheet? Don't think I see anything, Lloyd. If you have any closing remarks.
Let me simply end with a word of gratitude to those of you who have taken time on this Tuesday afternoon to participate in this session. This session has been recorded and we'll be making it available to people throughout our CoC so they can understand this process. Certainly, one of the key reasons the CoC has adopted these performance measures is to invite and encourage all of our projects to use the HMIS, especially, but their database for to look at ways they are serving people experiencing homelessness or formerly homeless people in their permanent housing projects, and to really consider what can be done to improve overall project performance. The Performance Management Committee recommended these specific performance measures and benchmarks to the CoC board, the Homeless Services Advisory Committee, believing that these are the most important project measures and that performance measures that projects in the various project types should really focus on. And if we're going to continue to work together to reduce and end homelessness for people experiencing homelessness, hopefully projects and people administering those projects are paying attention on a regular basis to how well they're performing and looking at what their performance data says. So please consider this as one more tool in your toolbox of working to improve overall performance for the benefit of people that your projects are serving. With that, we will end our session today. Thanks again for coming and blessings for the Thanksgiving
I'm so
holiday.
sorry. Can I
Yes.
just, one more thing? I was just gonna
Yes.
say that I'll go ahead and update the dashboard to tomorrow morning at the latest and send an update email to everyone with the reference document that Lloyd showed and as well as the access form again, just in case. And then you can expect to start receiving access to the dashboard by the 28th. That way I can give people some time to submit the form.
Very good. Thank you so much, Melissa. Really appreciate Melissa's work on this project. It's been a good team effort of the two of us, and we're grateful. And I think Ruby may have made some contributions as well, our former coordinator, who's now a project analyst as well, and grateful for the teamwork that we have in our department. Have a great rest of your day, everyone, and a wonderful Thanksgiving and 2022 holiday season. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.